Hello, everyone. I hope you're here. I hope you're getting ready. You have your pen and paper ready. I forgot my drink. I will be right back. Just one moment. I'm coming. Sorry about that. Had to get my drink. I had left it in the kitchen. Okay, I went with peppermint tea yet again. What do you guys have? I'm excited about today because it's going to be a good topic. I hope you don't have just your drink, but you also have pen and paper and you're willing to write some of these things down and go back over the video probably again and see how much you missed, maybe keep working on it, all of that great stuff. So welcome. I ran a little bit too quick to the kitchen. Calm down. Hi, Laura. Ginger tea, cold or hot? Looks like a cold drink. No, it looks like a hot tea you put there. All right. I have some pretty good notes today for us to be talking about. How's your day been, everybody? Oh, cold. Yeah. Well, down in Florida, I would expect that you'd have cold ginger tea. What else would there be? Yeah. Thanks very much for joining, everyone. Hi, Linda. Welcome. So happy you're here. Today, we're talking about failing forward, your greatest opportunity to inspire and lift others up. I almost called you Marty again, Marcia. You have hot cocoa. Yum. Marshmallows or no? I have to let her answer. Okay, so one of the things, I thought that this was a really apropos thing for me to talk about because as I said in the introduction paragraph for this whole thing, I'll just go ahead and read it. Life is tough. Believe me, I know. Hi, Terry. Is Terry joining you, Linda? Marcia, you're funny. Never any marshmallows, huh? Okay. Well, anyway, life is tough. Believe me, I know. Whatever it is that caused you to miss your mark, grief, overwhelm, your marketing plan failed, someone wrecked their car into a pole and took out the neighborhood's electricity on the night your big project was due. It can be your greatest opportunity to use your influence to inspire others and give them the strength and courage to fail forward too. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. How did anybody? Oh, good. Thanks, Linda. Okay, so you both had a good day. Hi, Dawn. Are you joining us from work today, Dawn? Everybody have their notebook or pen ready to go? No, I do, and I'm all ready for this already. Anyway, you guys all know that I'm a huge proponent for, great, Dawn. Thank you. You said yes. I'm a big proponent for journaling, and this is my current journal here. You can imagine it's lots of feelings put down on that page. Lots of growth has happened in this book, and I have a stack of them. Sometimes I wonder, do I want people to find those when I'm gone, or do I want them to go with me? I don't know. I'll have to see. Anyway, so a major inspiration for this particular live stream today is John Maxwell's book that's called Failing Forward. He wrote that in 2000. Okay. I was wondering who had texted, and that was actually Patty, who's visiting California right now. So anyway, John Maxwell's book of Failing Forward. This man, he's a leadership guru. He really knows what he's talking about. Many people have read, I don't know how many books he has, but many, many books. And he is recognized around the world as somebody who coaches leaders very well. Okay. Well, you guys getting ready? Are you ready to get going? Get started on all of this? Or should we hang out for a little bit? Terry, tell me about yourself somehow. What do we need to know? I think everybody else has been introduced. Very happy you're here. While you're thinking about that, I'll go ahead and get started. I have my screen to my right of me because I bought this book, but it is not available until tomorrow. So it'll be, Amazon's going to deliver it tomorrow is what I'm getting at. So I have to go with the ebook version from the library for now. So, all right. John Maxwell says, how people see failure and deal with it, whether they possess the ability to look beyond it and keep achieving, impacts every aspect of their lives. Yet that ability seems difficult to acquire. Most people don't know where to start looking to get it. So that's what we're going to be talking about pretty much today. Everybody has different things that they could see as failures, whether it's somebody else, what they did to your life, whatever happened in your life, somebody died or your car broke down, or maybe it was your responsibility. Somehow you overslept. You're irresponsible somehow. Maybe cancer has affected your life. I know it certainly affected mine. Sometimes it's in your control and sometimes it's not. But we need to figure out how to get ourselves picked back up again, regroup, and move forward. And that's what he's talking about, failing forward instead of staying in that position of stuckness and being overwhelmed and just overpowered by failure of any kind. One thing, a story that he told is that when he was in high school, he was a very good student, apparently. And he memorized for a history test 83 dates for one test, one history test. He says that the teacher believed if you could cite the dates, you had mastered the material. He got an A on the test and promptly forgot everything 3 days later. He couldn't remember any of them. And I'm kind of with that too. I have a hard time with history because, when I was in high school, I had a hard time connecting with the history teacher, to be honest. And, having ADHD myself, it was very difficult for me to sit there and just listen for 6 hours a day anyhow. But he had a very quiet, melodic voice. It was really hard to hear. I do like numbers, but dates mean nothing. So for me, now that I'm a little bit older, not 18 anymore, in case you were wondering, it's very nice for me to be able to go through movies that people have made from different historical periods. Like I can watch even Pride and Prejudice from A&E. It sounds wrong all of a sudden, but watching that helps me understand better because it's written by Jane Austen, somebody who was living in that time period. I can understand it better. And then, of course, going back to the Young Victoria, that movie, and I'm able to piece together history that way. Trying to memorize 83 dates for a test. Well, that's what the education system, unfortunately, is kind of forced into trying to say it is success or failure, according to whatever grade that you're given. And granted, it's a very difficult thing to assess how much a child or a student is learning if they are doing the work that they should be learning or doing, and if they are accomplishing what they need to. But that's the way the system works. But that's the way that we're trained all the way up until adulthood. We're in this, okay, well, I've got to perform in this particular way, and my grade means everything. They even try to tell you that it's going to go on your permanent record. If you can't climb that rope, it's going to go on your permanent record, and you're not going to be able to get into the college you want to go into. And then you're not going to be able to have the career you wanted to have. And it's just all a mess. You're a failure from the get-go. Or having those teachers who try to tell you, they not good teachers anyway, telling you that you're just not good enough, like Einstein's teachers did. I remember reading a story many years ago, and I could not cite it now for the life of me. But I remember him being told, or the teacher told his mother, don't even bother sending him to school. He's not smart enough to learn. And that's Einstein. He was just on a completely different playing field. So it's easy to accept failure according to the standards through which we grew up. And that's not the way that we should be looking at failure. That's what John Maxwell is talking about. And that's what we're talking about through all of this. We're not just going to go over his book. I'm just going to cover the first 3.5 chapters approximately, and then take it from there. So, all right. Another thing that John Maxwell says, he actually quotes Mr. Hamilton, who had an article in Leadership magazine. And it says, the increase of suicides, alcoholics, and even some forms of nervous breakdowns is evidence that many people are training for success when they should be training for failure. Failure is far more common than success. Poverty is more prevalent than wealth, and disappointment more normal than arrival. You don't arrive, you don't achieve, you don't stay, you not during this life. Life is a matter of growth and continuing on. Now, here's a question for the chat. I wonder, Dawn might have a pretty good idea because I know you watch baseball, but anyone know what the best batting average is of all time? If you want to take a guess, I'd love to hear it, or actually read it. Anyone have any ideas? Laura, I wonder if your kids happen to know. I think it may surprise you. Of all time, all of the big names that you could possibly ever think of. Babe Ruth. I don't know. I'm not a baseball watcher, so it's hard for me to say. Oh, Dawn says not a clue. Okay. Anybody have any kind of clue? I don't know if you guys can get to your chat very easily, but just take a guess. If 100%, I mean, of course, if you hit every single ball, their batting average, every single time and you get on base, then that would be 100%. Just take a guess, someone. I think this is an amazing idea, the representation of what success and failure is. I can tell you it was in 1943. Hey, there you go, Dawn. Good job, Linda. Okay. There you go, Marcia. I like it. So 386, 500, and 350, basically, or 35%. Well, you're very, very close. It's 471. The best batting average of all time is by, and I don't know if I'm going to say his name right, but Tito Vargas, 1943, like I said. Can you imagine if a test that you take in high school or how you perform on your job, which is what these guys were doing, if you only got 47% right and you failed 53% or missed the mark some way? It's all a matter of how do you define success and failure. That's amazing to me. I mean, you miss 53% of the time and you're the best one of all time ever. It's pretty incredible. Well, I'm going to read a story to you that he talks about. See if I can get to it real quick. Okay, it does not like being there. Okay, there we go. All right. He said the title of this particular section is Putting a New Face on Obstacles. And forgive me, this is a couple paragraphs, but I will read it in a pace that you'll be able to understand, and I won't speed through it too much. He says, when I think of people who were able to look trouble in the eye and forge ahead, one of the first ones who comes to mind is Mary Kay Ash. Anybody recognize that name? Has anyone ever purchased any of her products? I know I have. It was a lot of fun. You know, those parties that we would get to have, and then talking about who wants to be a representative for her company. She has built quite an organization. During the last 4 or 5 years, mind you, this book is written in 2000. During the last 4 or 5 years, I've had many opportunities to speak to people in her cosmetics company about leadership. In fact, as I travel around the country doing conferences and seminars, it seems that no matter where I speak, there are always at least a dozen Mary Kay consultants in attendance. I admire Mary Kay. She overcame a lot of obstacles in her career, and she never let failure get the better of her. Mary Kay's first career was in direct sales, and she was quite successful. But she also found that it was difficult for a woman to progress in the corporate world, especially in the 50s and early 60s, even after 25 years of success. And this is a quote from Mary Kay. I had worked my way up to being a member of the board of the company. I was with only to find that, even though our sales force was made up entirely of women, it was governed by an all-male board, and her opinions were of no value. I constantly heard, Mary Kay, you're thinking like a woman again. I felt rejection in the worst form, so I decided to retire. Any of you ladies that are with us today, I'm pretty sure that you know exactly what that feels like, what Mary Kay is talking about. I remember going to look at minivans one time, and I was told, well, I need you to go home and just come back whenever your husband is able to be with you. Nobody in that shop got my business, of course. But Mary Kay, the story goes on to say, her retirement didn't last long. I mean, she decided to retire, excuse me, and her retirement did not last long. By the time a month passed, she was stir crazy. She was ready to start her own business. If she was going to encounter obstacles, they would be there only because she brought them on herself. She decided on a cosmetics business that would get every woman who worked in it unlimited opportunities. She purchased the formulas in the best beauty products she'd ever found, worked up a marketing plan, and prepared to set up a corporation. It didn't take long for her to hit her first obstacle. When she visited her attorney to make legal arrangements for the corporation, he insulted her and predicted her failure. Mary Kay, he said, if you're going to throw away your life savings, why don't you just go directly to the trash can? It will be so much easier than what you're proposing. Her accountant spoke to her in similar terms. Now, what I want you to hear, by the way, as I'm reading this is not her failure. It's the pressure that she's receiving from her environment. So when we're talking about failing forward, I want to keep reiterating, this is from a position of no matter what happened, you missed the mark somehow, even if it's someone else's fault. So let's keep going on with their story. Despite their attempts to discourage her, she moved ahead. She sank her $5,000 life savings into her new business, every cent she had. She put her husband in charge of the administrative side of things as she worked feverishly to prepare the products, design the packaging, write the training materials, and recruit consultants. They were making wonderful progress. But then a month before she was able to open for business, her husband died of a heart attack right on their kitchen table. Again, not her fault. Most people would never have been able to go on after that. They would have accepted defeat and faded away, but not Mary Kay. And mind you, she was broke then too. She had spent all of their money, their entire life savings on starting this company, had no idea her husband was going to pass away. She kept going, and on September 13th of 1963, she launched her business. Today, the company has more than $1 billion in annual sales, employs 3,500 people, and empowers 500,000 direct sale consultants in 29 markets worldwide. And Mary Kay Ash has received just about every award an entrepreneur could dream of. Despite these adverse circumstances, obstacles, and hardships, she failed forward. So anybody should be very proud of her. That's pretty amazing. There's everybody has come across difficulties, absolutely. Um, yeah, John Maxwell, who has written this book, he was talking about some of the things that held him back. For one, he had his prize to keep his eye on was the grade, and to do the very best that he possibly could to get the best grade. And then when he got out into the work world, he took on a small church took the pastorate of the small church. And that was an interesting story. So if you'd like to read about that, go ahead and get the book. But I was just contemplating some of the things that he had said were obstacles in his own life. And his biggest one at the earliest parts of his adult career was perfectionism. He wanted to be perfect. So that is something that he could control, but only once he got a hold of it, well, recognized it, got a hold of it, and then worked forward with that. But what he says is that a lot of people kept advising him during that time. They would say, if the possibility of failure were erased, what would you attempt to achieve? He said he thought about that and thought about that as a young man, in his mid-20s, trying to figure out, okay, well, what would I do? What would I do? I don't want to be afraid. I want to, power forward in this life. What am I going to do? And after contemplating this for a while and, being seasoned by life a little bit, and his father, who was an excellent mentor to him as an adult, John Maxwell changed that question to what he perceives as a better question. And I would have to agree. He changed it to, if your perception of and response to failure were changed, what would you attempt to achieve? It would be quite Pollyanna-ish if you would think that you could possibly make it through life missing every step that could possibly be an obstacle or failure of any kind. And so when somebody is trying to say, well, I'm going to push forward and I'm going to succeed in everything that I do because I'm going to make sure to come up with a plan that covers everything, it's not going to work. So what John Maxwell was saying, if you change your perception and your response to failure, that even sits better as you're thinking about it. Much like a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about cognitive dissonance. When we're pushing forward, going, trying to make ourselves believe what we know isn't true. I mean, why would you try to contemplate what you would want to attempt if the possibility of failure were erased? That's not reality. So, like John Maxwell is saying, let's change our perception of response to failure and see how that works. Because failure is a reality of life. He says, I don't know what obstacles you are facing in your life right now. And I want you to listen to these words as though he's saying to you right now. Sorry, I'm tongue-tied today, apparently. He says, I don't know what obstacles you are facing in your life right now, but whatever they are doesn't matter. What does matter is that your life can change if you're willing to look at failure differently. You have the potential to overcome any problems, mistakes, or misfortunes. All you have to do is learn to fail forward. I like that, Marcia. She wrote, oh, the places you'll go, you will get stuck temporarily. That's right. That's right. As long as you pay attention and you decide that you're not going to stay there in that failure, you're going to fail forward. Yes. Okay. So He has given us, yes, Dr. Seuss. Yes. I remember you talking about that book and how your grandsons were reading that. Isaiah? No, excuse me. Yeah. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyhow, so he gives us a list of failing backwards, which is obviously not what we want to do. And he says that some examples of failing backward are blaming others. Anybody come to mind when you hear that? Failing backward, they blame others. Repeating the same mistakes. Expecting to never fail again. Or expecting to continually fail. Accepting tradition blindly. Being limited by past mistakes. Thinking I am a failure. Or quitting. Now, instead of focusing on those things, let's focus on what he says is failing forward, taking responsibility, learning from each mistake, knowing failure is a part of the process, maintaining a positive attitude, challenging outdated assumptions, taking new risks, believing something didn't work, and persevering. I like that list. Did people come to mind as I was reading that list? Did you happen to think of people that you know are successful or not? And some of those characteristics being theirs? All right, here is a chance for you to please. This is not for you to put in the chat necessarily, but this is one of the reasons why I asked you to have pen and paper handy or your journal or wherever you'd like to write it. But I want you to think, while I'm talking about this stuff, of any kind of a failure in the past in your own life that you would be able to evaluate. In a little bit, we're going to have the opportunity to do that, but I'd like for you to have something in mind when we get to it. Okay, I'll assume that you figured something out. If you haven't, you have a couple minutes until we try to address it, but make sure you're thinking about it. What failure, in quotes, did you have in the past that you would like to think about? All right, so he gives us definitions of failure and success. Because if we're going, we have to re-perceive, change our perspective on what failure actually is so that we can move forward. All right, new definitions of failure. First, he said that people think failure is avoidable. It's not. I think all of us really actually recognize that, but it's helpful to say it out loud. People think failure is avoidable, and it is not. He suggests instead of thinking failure, think opportunity to learn lessons. There are no mistakes, only lessons. A lesson is repeated until it is learned. If you don't learn the easy lessons, they get harder, and pain will certainly get your attention. You'll know you've learned a lesson when your actions change. Okay, the second thing, defining failure. People think failure is an event. It's not. Failure, like success, is a journey. He defines success as knowing your purpose in life, growing to reach your potential, and sowing seeds that benefit others. I don't know if you guys happen to recognize that. That is a big, 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 big part of the 6 dimensions of health and wellness that I have talked to you guys about so very much. First, you have to know your purpose in life and who you are, who you're created to be. You need to understand enough of yourself to be able to celebrate what it is that you bring to this world and that nobody else can. We need you to be authentically you and grow to reach your potential. That's so important. And sowing seeds that benefit others. That's through the vocation that you choose or the passion and the calling that you have. As long as you choose your career to be along the same lines as your vocation, your passion, then the world would be a better place. Okay, the third thing, people think failure is objective. It's not. I will explain that in just a moment, but here's something for the chat. How many failed businesses do you think it takes on the average for an entrepreneur to succeed? How many times do they have to try and fail on the average for a business to succeed? I'd love to hear your answers. While you're getting ready to write those in, I'll explain what this means. People think failure is objective and it's not. Get to the right spot. Terry says 3. Linda says 5. Dawn says 10. I love it. Maybe if one more person can answer, then I will tell you guys. Marcia says 7. You guys are more pessimistic than I expected. I'm impressed. That in a good way, actually. It's 3.8 businesses. That means, like Mary Kay did, investing all of this time and effort in all of everything that she did to get started, and then it fails. And then you're like, oh, okay. You go on vacation, you think, oh, Laura, all right, 7. Yeah, it makes sense, right? You would think that it would be a lot of times. It takes a lot. It really does. But imagine that for a minute. Failure after failure after failure. But you still keep trying. As long as you have the right mindset, you can fail forward and make the world a better place by failing forward. Okay, so when he says that people think failure is objective and it's not, he says when you err, whether you miscalculate crucial figures, miss a deadline, blow a deal, make a poor choice concerning your children, or otherwise fumble a ball, what determines whether that action was a failure? Do you look at the size of the problem it causes or the amount of money it costs you and your organization? Is it determined by how much heat you have to take from your boss or by the criticism of your peers? No. Failure isn't determined that way. The answer is that you are the only person who can really label what you do a failure. It's subjective, not objective. Your perception of and response to your mistakes determine whether your actions are failures or not. I thought that was very interesting. Yeah. And the fourth thing, we'll move on to that one. Sometimes people think that failure is the enemy. It is not. There is an NBA coach, at least back in 2000, Rick Pitino. Okay, Dawn, you want me to repeat that? About the subjective objective? Oh, no. Do you mean number 4? People think failure is the enemy, and it's not. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Okay. Hopefully I repeated what you wanted me to repeat. I was kind of waiting for you. Okay. So people think failure is the enemy. Rick Pitino, sorry, I hope I'm saying his name right, an NBA coach, at least back in 2000 when John Maxwell was writing this book. He said that failure is good. It's fertilizer. Here's something for the chat. If you would, comment with us. Think back and figure out what so-called failure, and it doesn't need to be the same one as before, this failure that you think of in your own life put you in a better place. I have a story from my own life that I wanted to share with you about that because it felt like a massive failure, but it wasn't even my fault. About a year after I had gotten married, Steve and I moved down to Durham, North Carolina. And through his parents' network, we ended up being able to rent half of a house. It was a very large, very old brown house. I remember it. I was so excited because the landlord had said that we would be able to paint however we wanted. And we moved down there. That was our very first time using a moving truck. What a bonding, fun time we had. Getting everything set up. I remember painting the walls a yellow color, and I did all the trim in a happy green. Now I wouldn't choose those colors in the particular shades that I'd had, but we loved that place. Wouldn't you know? After a while, we realized just how many million jillion roaches we were living with. I had a brand new knife block that somebody had given me for our wedding. And anytime I would pull one of the knives out, I'd look in there and I'd see these little antlers going like this. I'm gross, 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 gross. Well, we're a broke young couple. We can't afford to move out. I'm going to use some, I don't remember exactly what the rent was, but it was something like $350, I want to say, $350 a month. And so that was all we could afford because we were just starting out and we were still just 21 years old. Yeah, so we had lived there, I think it was maybe 8 months or so, and super frustrating that the landlord came to me one day. By the way, I love bookkeeping and writing checks and taking care of bills and things like that. And that's an important thing to know. The landlord came to me one day and said, I'm sorry, you have 30 days to get out because you missed a payment for this particular month back here. And I was like, no, I didn't miss a single one. He says, well, I'm sorry, you have 30 days to get out. My wife and I were talking, and that's what you get. Are you kidding me? What? I was devastated because I was so upset. I wanted to be a successful, brand new wife, just living our lives in a different, not even just a different city, but a whole different state. I was very proud, even if there were roaches, okay, we'll go crazy with the, with the roach spray and everything. Whatever we need to do, we're going to make it because we're determined. Well, I went back through my records, and I was even able to find the checks, because you remember how they used to do. They would return the banks would return your canceled checks with the statements every month. So I was able to come up with a check for every single month. And he came back, I don't know, a couple weeks later when I said, I've got this proof right here. I never missed a single rent. That's not okay. You can't kick us out. And he says, I'm sorry, but my wife has already decided. And I thought, your wife, you said that you and your wife worked together on whatever. So, well, really quickly, as fast as we could, obviously, Steve and I were looking around for a different place to live. When we found a place that was less expensive. I think it was like $325 a month, and it had beautiful wood paneling. Well, I guess here, you can't see it here, but on the other wall, on the other side of the camera, is wood paneling in this room downstairs. I love the natural stone, the wood paneling, anything that feels like the outside has been brought in. I love that kind of stuff. So this was a big plus. It was a very clean apartment, cost less. It was closer to my work and everything. It was a massive thing, massive plus. So when I'm thinking about a so-called failure that put me in a better place, that's the one that came to mind first. All right. So Marcia, you said your first roach infested place was a haven. Okay. Does anybody have anything else to share about what kind of a failure actually puts you in a better spot? I would love to hear about it. Let's see. All right, the next point, John Maxwell says in his book, the fifth point where he's defining failure and success, he says that people think failure is the enemy, and it's not. the first thing I thought of as I was reading that was Ms. Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity like I have. When I was homeschooling my kids, we watched Magic School Bus a lot because it's such a wonderful educational program to teach anything from the solar system to the um, digestive system to, I don't know, why soap bubbles work in cleaning instead of just trying to scrub it with something. Well, the thing that Ms. Frizzle, they're crazy red-haired, she has frizzy hair and it's red and a curly, she always wore these crazy dresses. She says, take chances, get messy, make mistakes. And she talks about, we're going on an adventure. We're going to do these things. This is wonderful. So that's what I thought first. People find that failure is the enemy. No, it's not. It's a part of life. And like the coach said, it's fertilizer. And people who see failure as the enemy are captive to those who conquer it. Now think about this just for a minute. The fellow who never makes a mistake takes orders from the one who does. You have to have the guts to get out there and not be afraid of failure. For example, starting a YouTube live stream podcast every Sunday night. I'm so glad that you guys come. Any high achiever, and you'll discover a person who doesn't see, no, observe, excuse me. The screen is a little bit too far away. Observe any high achiever, and you'll discover a person who doesn't see a mistake as the enemy. That's true in any endeavor. Musicologist Eloise Ristad emphasizes that when we give ourselves permission to fail, we at the same time give ourselves permission to excel. I love it. All right, Dawn and Linda. Yeah. I don't know how much you want me to say to the World Wide Web about those things, but both of you found better employment after you lost the position where you were. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? You're so devastated in the moment. That's why failure feels so bad when you're a young adult. After you go through some years and you understand just how frequent failure comes knocking, it's a little easier to realize I am resilient. I'm able to handle that. Okay, true of Terry also. That's good. Good thing to remember. All right. Hopefully you guys have still got that in mind, what we're going to be talking about, your failure that hit so hard back in the past. People think that failure is irreversible. Nope, it's not. It's not. As long as you're still breathing, it is not irreversible. I love this saying. This was awesome. I think I might put it on my wall. There's an old saying in Texas. It doesn't matter how much milk you spill as long as you don't lose your cow. I love that. In other words, mistakes are not irreversible. Keep everything in perspective. The problems come when you see only the spilled milk and not the bigger picture. People who correctly see failure take it in stride. Resilience is extremely important. I'll be glad to repeat the CAF statement. It doesn't matter how much milk you spill as long as you don't lose your cow. So it's okay if you run out of gas money as long as you don't have your car, well, taken away. Right? And as long as you keep your income flowing or your way to get income coming, you'll be fine. Well, we already talked about people losing business or their jobs and such, and how devastating that can be and seen as a failure, even if the boss is so angry with you that you had made a mistake and that's why you've lost your job. But still. All right, number 6, people think failure is a stigma, and it's not. When you make mistakes, don't let them get you down, and don't let yourself think of them as stigmas. Each failure is a step to success. Now, the last one is 7. People think failure is final, and it's not. That's pretty obvious. There's a story about the guy. I don't know if you guys remember this back in, I think it was in the 80s. I remember something about that. I think it was in high school. The story of Sergio Zyman. He's the mastermind behind New Coke. Do you remember that? Coke was falling behind in sales to Pepsi, and they wanted to compete. This was an interesting thing. I didn't know the second half of this story. I thought, New Coke, how dumb is that? Even in my young mind. Why are you trying to compete with your competitor? I mean, in that particular way, yep, big flop, right, Dawn? Yeah, huge. Let's see if I can read through the story really quick. Okay, Zyman, who successfully introduced Diet Coke, believed that Coca-Cola needed to act boldly to reverse its 20-year market decline against its rival Pepsi. His solution was to stop offering the drink that had been popular for nearly 100 years, change the formula, and offer it as New Coke. The move was an abysmal failure that lasted 79 days in 1985 and cost the company about $100 million. People hated New Coke, and it caused Zyman to leave the company. I wonder if he was excused or if he left. That would have been pretty rough. This is the part that I didn't know. I have to go down a couple paragraphs, but then he ends up saying, where did he go? Okay, Zyman's problems with New Coke didn't keep him down. Years later, when asked if the venture was a mistake, Zyman answers, no. Categorically, no. A failure? No. A blunder, a misstep, a bust? Another word between bust and something else, he replies. Now, if you say to me, the strategy that you guys embarked on didn't work, I'll say, yeah, absolutely, it didn't work. But the totality of the action ended up being a positive. Like I said, this I didn't know. Ultimately, the return of Coca-Cola Classic made the company stronger. Zyman's assessment was confirmed by the late chairman and chief executive of the Coca-Cola Company, who rehired him in 1993, so 8 years later. And the CEO said, judge the results. We get paid to produce results. We don't get paid to be right. So see, they were not taught that, if you fail, you're done. That's it. And they don't say if the gentleman who made New Coke left or if he was excused, like I said. But if you tend to focus on the extremes of success and failure and to fixate on particular events in your life, try to put things in perspective. When you do, you'll be able to share the philosophy of someone such as the Apostle Paul, who is able to say, I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. And that was saying a lot, considering that Paul had been shipwrecked, whipped, beaten, stoned, and imprisoned. Throughout everything, his faith enabled him to maintain perspective. He realized that as long as he was doing what he was supposed to, his being labeled success or failure by others really didn't matter. And that kind of wraps up everything that he was saying. If you know who you are and what you're supposed to be doing and where you're supposed to be doing it, even if some people see you or they express to you that you're flopping, it doesn't really matter. You got to fail forward. You've got to have the tenacity inside yourself to keep moving forward. Yeah, I couldn't even believe that story about New Coke. But yes. All right. Now there's the third step to failing forward. Get to that spot. That's the thing about ebooks, isn't it? A regular book that's arriving tomorrow, I could have tabs and stuff and be really right on top of it. All right, now this is what I want to talk about, your past failure. Like I said, you don't have to put anything in the chat because this is supposed to be something that really, it stung. And maybe it was your own fault. Yeah. Anyway, so the third step is to remove the you from failure. So thinking about that failure in your past, you can break out of thinking in a negative pattern by looking at that area of your life and do these things. So this is where the notebook and pen come handy. Examine your expectations for that area. Write them down. Are they realistic? Do you expect to do everything perfectly? Do you expect to succeed on the first try? How many mistakes should you expect to make before you succeed? After you think about those things, realistically, not putting yourself necessarily in a small box and not going free for all, think about those things, write them out, and consider, adjust your expectations. The second thing, find new ways to do your work. That's one thing in coaching people through their career choices. You may be built in a particular way that you should be doing this type of a job, but just because you're in that, a job that doesn't fit, even though the title matches, that doesn't mean it's wrong. You see what I'm saying? Obviously, find new ways to do the work that you should be doing. Brainstorm at least 20 new approaches and then try at least half of them. That's what he says. And I have to agree with. Yeah. The third thing is to focus on your strengths. How can you use your best skills and personal strengths to maximize your effort? How is this coming across with the failure that you thought of in the past in your life? And the last one, very important, obviously, vow to bounce back. No matter how many times you fall down, pick yourself up and keep going. Keep going. So the 3 steps for failing forward so far are realize that one major difference between average people and achieving people is the ability to fail forward. They don't let failure keep them back. The second one is to learn a new definition of failure. And the third is to remove the you from failure. Now, that's the end of the 3rd chapter. I said we were going to go through about 3.5 of these, and then we're going to discuss a little bit more about the entire topic. At the beginning of chapter 4, which is called You're Too Old to Cry, but It Hurts Too Much to Laugh. Have you ever been there? Oh my goodness. I don't know. Usually I end up laughing pretty hard when I've done something stupid, because you have to have a good, healthy sense of humor about yourself, right? He talks about the Wright brothers, and they were bicycle mechanics who pioneered the manned motorized flight in the first part of the 20th century. Another man was expected to put the first airplane in the air, but he didn't. His name was Samuel Langley. He's even Dr. Samuel Langley. He was a respected former professor of mathematics and astronomy, who at the time was the director of the Smithsonian Institution. This guy's reputation was on the line when he was trying to make this, make the plane. Langley was an accomplished thinker, scientist, and inventor. He had published several important works on aerodynamics, and he possessed a vision for achieving manned flight. In fact, in the mid to late 1890s, he had done extensive experiments with large unmanned plane models and had achieved a high degree of success. In 1898, Langley approached the U.S. War Department for funding to design and build an airplane to carry a man aloft. The department gave him a commission of $50,000. This is before 1900. $50,000. Langley went right to work. By 1901, he had successfully tested an unmanned, gasoline-powered, heavier-than-air craft. It was the first in history. And when he enlisted the aid of Charles Manley, who was an engineer, who built a powerful new lightweight engine based on the designs of somebody else, his success seemed inevitable. On October 3rd of 1903, Langley expected his years of work to come to fruition. Journalists and curious onlookers watched. Charles Manley, wearing a cork-lined jacket, I guess that was protection. He strode across the deck of a modified houseboat and climbed into the pilot's seat of the craft called the Great Aerodrome. I will try to cut to the chase here. But when they attempted the launch, part of the aerodrome got caught, and the biplane was flung into 16 feet of water, a mere 50 yards away from the boat. Criticism of Langley was brutal. In the face of failure, that's not really even funny. Excuse me for snickering a little bit. But at first, Langley didn't let that failure or the accompanying criticism deter him. 8 weeks later, in early December, he and Manley were ready to attempt flight again. The craft caught on the launch rail, and it plunged into the river upside down, and Manley nearly died. Again, the criticism was fierce. Langley said afterward, "I have brought to a close the portion of the work which seemed to be specially mine, the demonstration of the practicality of mechanical flight. For the next stage, which is the commercial and practical development of the idea, it is probable that the world may look to others." So he kind of gracefully let that go, which was good. They talk about fear of failure next. People who get so paralyzed by fear of failure that they can't move forward. And we're going to have to wait for another day to be able to talk about that. Perhaps next week, we'll see. But I want you to think about any time that you come up to a place in life where something knocks the wind out of your sails, knocks you on your backside. For whatever reason, you're hurting and bewildered. I want you to sit there as long as you need to figure out what hurts. I've talked about defining emotions and the importance of that before. And then also, another very important thing is to have a list of things that you know about yourself. You see here I have tabs. Anytime life gets me down, I don't go back here to just blow smoke and try to, puff myself up, feel better. But I have these things written out so that I can remember, who am I? What is my purpose? Who should I be doing these things for? And how have things worked in the past? Reading those things give me the resilience that I need to move forward after something has knocked me down. After you do that, you've assessed the pain, you've dealt with it a little bit, then it's time to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, come up with a new plan, and then move forward. At that point, make sure you eat right, you exercise, you sleep well, take care of that body that you've got, and then move forward into the vocation, the calling, the passion that you know that you should be working in wherever it needs to be. And call on a community like ours here in this chat, in this, every time that we get together, it's very nice to have people that are able to support one another. Make sure that you have a group of people around you like that and move forward. So I'm very happy that you guys joined today. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about? Is there suggestions? Would you like to talk about what fear of failure is like next week? Or do you have something else that you would like to bring up? I know it's difficult for people to immediately respond when I bring up a topic for the chat. But if you have something, he talks about breaking the cycle and moving forward that way. I would take the opportunity while you guys are thinking about that. And you can always get a hold of me later or put it in the comment section after we're done with this. And of course, subscribing to the channel helps me be able to get this out further, and also liking the video if you'd be so kind. Hopefully you got plenty out of this today. and doing whatever you can to share it or talk about it in whatever way. Thank you very much for the time that you've spent on the video. That helps a lot trying to get this forward. I am a life coach. I consider myself a health and wellness coach, but it's not just for our physical bodies. It is basically what a primary care physician does for all of the parts of, medicine. That's the kind of a life coach I am of health and wellness. Health and wellness of the 6 dimensions includes your emotions, like we were talking about, the feelings and your identity, and then the mental habits that you set in place to move forward and have a good system set for success as much as possible. And then there's physical wellness. And after that, then we have our vocational wellness, the social wellness. And after all of those ducks are in a row, financial wellness as the 6th dimension of health and wellness. It's a breeze. It's a matter of just getting a calculator out and knowing how to budget, which is not a difficult thing. So if you'd like to learn any more about the services that I provide, you're very welcome to go to coachamypratt.com or email me directly at coachamypratt@gmail.com. Thanks. All right. So let's see. Linda wrote, Terry and I both think fear of failure would be a great topic. Okay. And Dawn, you said, let's do that. All right. Sounds good. Like we were talking, for some reason, I am drawing a blank. Last week's, why can't I think of the name of it? Anyway, it ties in with that. So yeah, that would be really good that we would be able to do that. Okay, cool. All right. Make it really super interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed our time together because I always love it when you come. Thank you very much for giving me the reason to put a video together like this. And it will be available on YouTube. I may try to tweak just a little bit here and there, maybe put some of the notes up on the screen and then resubmit it as a second version, possibly. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening and a fantastic week. I hope you're able to find some of these things that we talked about tonight. Any kind of a failure, try to think, okay, how am I going to use this failure to be propelled forward instead of sitting into that and just not being able to make the most of it? Anyway, thank you so much. Hope you guys have a wonderful night, like I said. Bye.